Hey guys, this is Ash from Imagineyourgoddess. I'm here with a deck profile, and as you can see, I'll be doing PRISM Bermuda Triangle deck from the new Dazzling Divas set that just released. So to start off with, I run Prism Smile Coral. Of course, this is a Prism deck, and in an archetype deck, you generally run as many of the archetypes as you can. And since your main vanguard in this deck is Labrador, and her ability requires calling 3 prisms whenever she attacks to get the plus 10k plus 1 crit, this is an easy way to achieve that because Labrador's other ability is to counterblast a prism and to send a prism to hand, and her ability is when something is sent to hand that is a Bermuda Triangle, you can also return her to hand. So essentially it lets Labrador return 2 cards with 1 counterblast, assuming she's one of the cards. But or Vert, when you break right over her, you return 2 Bermuda Triangles to your hand. Well, this is the 3rd card that can be returned, and assuming you had a full field before, you can now activate Labrador's effect. Anyway, moving on to the triggers. I run 8 crit. As you can see, there is the Prism crit, of course. Like I said, run as many prisms as possible. But then I run a different type of crit, and this is Florida, but it can be anything. Generally, you can run 8 crit, 4 draw, 4 stand, or 4 crit, 4 draw, 4 stand, 4 heal. But I like to do 8 crit, 4 draw, mainly because I don't really like stands in general. The Prism stand is actually not that bad. Her ability to let you Soul Blast 1 when she's returned to hand to give something plus 4k is actually not that bad. The problem is you don't have a lot of soul in this deck in general to play around with, so you gotta be smart with it, and also I don't like stands, so she's a pretty cute looking card though. And like I mentioned, I'm running 4 draws. Again, Prism draw, so I'd probably be running 5 draw, or maybe even try my hand at 12 crit if it wasn't for the prisms. It's mainly because Labrador's ability requires prisms to be counterblasted to work, and I've actually had many games where most of my counterblast was not prisms, and it didn't work out too well. So it's kind of reinforced the idea, run more of the archetype. And of course, 4 heals. Again, you want to be able to use more prisms, and of course the stack if necessary. For my grade 1s, I run 4 of the 10k attackers. These are always generally really good because they can be a booster, or if you need to be, they're also an attacker that can hit most of the common vanguards right now. I mean, pretty soon they won't be able to hit anything alone, but and 7k boost is also pretty good. It lets you, put behind one of your 11 or 12k's attackers, and all of a sudden you have 18k in case they have cross rides. Then I run 4 clears. Her ability is when she's returned to your hand, you can Soul Blast 1 to give something plus 4k. And I try to use her sparingly because there's not a lot of counterblasts in this deck, but in general she's pretty decent, like for when you need to push another stage of like magic numbers, and you would like put her on the rear guard or something, like her ability on the rear guard. And then again, 7k booster, she's pretty decent, and a prism. Then I run 4 perfect shields. Dangerous meta. You need as many of these. You need to run a max number of these as you can. So just so you get out of those pesky situations that 2 cards will save you from. Finally, I run 2 Mermaid Idol Felucia. Now, if you need more prisms, I would recommend running Prism Promise Late, which is Labrador's 11k booster. But I don't like the art on Late, frankly. She's just not my type of mermaid. And these, other than they have pretty decent art, they soul charge. So Remember when I said that this deck is pretty low on soul? Well, this gives you a bit more options. I mean, ideally, you want to ride this, and the other one is you want to play the other one as a booster. So behind the Vanguard. So that's ideal situation. So I kind of think of these as like a 10k booster, in that most decks that run 10k boosters, you'll run 2 of them, and you just might get them, and if you don't get them, whatever. And that's kind of the same with these. And I haven't had the soul charge these, or not soul charge. I haven't had the counterblast use these in the counterblast zone, damage zone yet. So luckily, I haven't gotten to that situation. But maybe I'll change my mind and might run late, or might be forced to run late if I find myself putting her in damage too much. So moving on to grade 2s, I run 4 of the new 10k vanillas. It's archetype vanilla. Generally, your preferred ride as well, so you can defend easier until you hit grade 3 anyway. Then I run 4 of the 12k attackers. It's really good. Hits anything really except for cross rides without booster, and yeah, she's just a really strong attacker. Sadly though, since you don't run the 8k vanilla, she only swings max to 19, 24 if you have 23 actually if you do Clear's ability. Then I run 3 Prism Rosas. Now these can be Celtics if you need more of those soul blasting things. Celtic's basically a clear. She's 9k when she's returned to hand. Soul Blast 1 and plus 4k on something. But I tend to find myself needing attackers more. I think of Prism right now as a very offensive build, aggressive anyway, and for that you need attackers. I mean, the 9k is okay, and it's probably a better ride, but I haven't found myself having to ride her too much, and she's also essentially, when you have a grade 3, a conditionless 11k attacker, because both your units have limit break abilities. So moving on to my grade 3s, I run 4 verts. So now we get to the first break ride in the English meta, and what are my thoughts on it? Well, she's really good in that if you're stuck with Coral, the starter, behind her, then she'll swing for 18, assuming you have a full field. So she swings for 18. Her ability is when you ride, you have limit break, and you ride over her with a grade 3, plus 10k to grade 3, return 2 things to your hand, and draw a card. So she essentially is a break even on break ride. And her ability combined with Labrador's is very devastating. But if you get this in hand when you start off, and you have, like, let's say you get her and a Labrador in hand, you want to send her back. Most games you won't want to break ride. Like, let's say you're fighting a cross ride deck. I can see you being able to do it then, because you really want to just break ride whenever you're fighting a deck that's slower, or if you aren't forced to, or if you're not at really high damage by the time you hit grade 3. So if you're like 2 damage or 3 damage by the time you're at grade 3, and you have both her and Labrador, then you might want to consider running Labrador. But you also you need a field to attack with. So I've seen people not ride Labrador and ride her just so that they can break ride, but then they don't have any other attackers. So there's no point in the break riding if you have nothing else to attack with. So if you have her and Labrador in hand by turn 3, and you have no other attackers, just go ahead and ride Labrador. And of course, star of the deck I've been talking about is 4 Labradors. Probably the best card Prism has, and also the reason they're kind of a low-end S-tier deck, in a sense. Her ability is to limit break 4. When she attacks, you can choose 3 prisms, up to 3 prisms from your hand, and call them to open rearguard circles. And if you call 3 this way, then she gets plus 10k, plus 1 crit. Her other ability is to counterblast 1 prism unit, and you can choose a prism card from your rearguard circle and return to your hand. So that's what I was saying when you counterblast with Coral, and when you counterblast send Coral back, or send something else back. Let's say you send Vert back. Coral would return because of Coral's ability. So that's counterblasting 1 to send 2. Luckily, Vert is also a Prism, so that's pretty nice as well. But you know, her biggest weakness, of course, is if you don't have enough counterblast, and Vert also really helps her set up very nicely, because at the first turn you'll be swinging for at least 31 unboosted. Now, on the topic of boosters, when you use her ability to attack, something that I wasn't too sure about the first time I used it, but you know, I've since tried to correct that, is that you can't boost with anything you call, because that is after the step. You have to declare your booster before that her ability activates. So if she swings and then calls this won't boost. She'll still swing for like 21 or 31 if you broke right, but what I find about her ability is that generally it's perfect shield bait. You just bait them with perfect shields, and that's kind of why crits are really good in this deck, running 8 in all, because when you bait the perfect shield, you're going to put triggers elsewhere. And that, you know, that's pretty good. But I also think that she's kind of like MLB, but doesn't minus itself. The problem is MLB can do that as long as you keep getting the blasters out on the field somehow, whereas she's counterblast, essentially counterblast 2 unless you have an empty slot in your field before you do it. So kind of one of the strategies I would do is, so let's say I have this as a field, and this. So in my opponent's turn, I would intercept with this, and then I use her ability, and I could return this and this. That way it's one counterblast to do the ability. And then of course, let's say on attack I call these. And of course, when I sent her back, I would also +4 on this side, just so this side would swing for 22 before triggers. I mean, you're only getting a 21k attack, but let's say you swing 21 at a cross ride, then that's going to be 10 for a 1 pass. And then, you know, you swing another 11k, obviously, that's going to be 15 for a 1 pass. So regardless of if you have the booster or not, it's still going to require a lot of cards from their hand, or a perfect guard. I mean, I feel like the booster's kind of a win more in this situation, and that's, you know, that's just how it is. So yeah, this has been my PRISM Bermuda Labrador deck, essentially. There's not really much variation in these decks. It's just kind of the lineup you use for the non-PRISM slots that you have, or you can go full PRISM with the late, like I said. And of course the trigger lineup, which I imagine most people will probably do 8-4 anyway. So yeah, this has been Ash from Imagine Your Goddess, and I'll catch you guys next time.